For sure. And we are right on time. So, guys, I'm going to get started because we want to maximize the entire time that we have with the beautiful Leah Lachlan. And so, Leah, I see you're on. I'm really excited.
Me too.
So, really, what I want to say. Okay, hang on a second. I'm getting okay. Yeah, really what I want to say just very, very, very briefly is that um, I want to thank Leah for her willingness to so openly share and so freely share with us all of her tips and things and her mindset and all of that that she has embodied over the years that she's continually refined. Leah is married happily to Cliff. They have 5 beautiful children. And I want to say that they really have worked so intentionally together as a team to build a life that is an intentional life, to build a life that like they vision what they want for the future and they go to work together as a team to really to make that happen. And when I think of all the people that I know in all the world who really walks a walk and talks a talk and lives the life that they say they live, Leah and Cliff do that. And so it's a great honor, Leah, to
Mhm.
have today to be able to spotlight you. I just want to thank you again so much. I marvel at you. We all marvel at you, and I know we've all got our pens ready. We're ready to go. So anyway, thank you again, and we're so grateful.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for this brilliant idea that you shared with me right at the start of the seminar year. And I'm like, I want to participate because you had just asked me to, do this family systems. I'm like, well, can I participate in the whole thing and offer it to my area? And of course, you welcomed us with open arms and such a brilliant idea. And it's such a value add to
Mm,
people's lives because we don't just work Mary Kay in a vacuum. We're wives and moms. We run homes. We're women. We're believers, and we never would just have our business in this isolated place. And so it does touch every area of your life. And so thank you for the brilliance and leading the way with this, and just really, really honored to be a part of it. And I've got a lot to say. So if it feels like I'm talking fast and rushing, it's because I
Go for
am,
it, girl.
because I'm just gonna like hammer through this. I have a few disclaimers, you guys. So before I jump into the meat of the content. And the first thing I want to say is that this content is geared towards moms who are building a Mary Kay business in the home with young to teenage children at home. And I realize that that is not everyone's circumstance. Some of you haven't started building a family yet. Some of you have children who are grown and already out of the home. Some of you work full-time or part-time other jobs, and Mary Kay's not your primary thing. Some of you are single parents, and there are just endless varieties of life circumstances that we can all have. And I wanted to acknowledge that. Yet, I hope and trust that despite your life circumstance, that there will be nuggets and takeaways that will be applicable to your personal circumstances, um, even if they're not just like mine. And I believe you can take the information and make adaptations to meet the needs of the season of life that you're personally in right now. And I'm not going to attempt to make those adaptations for you because I'm not going to assume to know your situation, but I believe you can take all of this and make relevant applications to your current circumstance, even if it's not like mine. And also, this does support you in people, if this isn't your circumstance with working your business from home, and having children at home, it's probably somebody else's that you know, a hostess, a customer, a team member. And so I hope it supports you in coaching and encouraging other people as well. How you do family in your home is as unique as all of our fingerprints. So not everything I'm going to say is going to resonate with you or work for the family dynamic that you have. But I still believe you can take away some core truths and adapt it to your situation. I will say that parenting tips are woven throughout this content. And I know this is about family systems, and I really worked hard to stay on topic. But I can't help but weave a little bit of parenting in there because most of these systems involve my children and interacting with them. I had this new mom realization when I had Ian. Ian's my oldest. He's 13, almost 14. He'll turn 14 in the new year. And up until starting a family, okay, I had graduated from high school with honors. I maintained multiple part-time jobs throughout high school while playing high-level sports all year round, sometimes multiple sports. I had a very busy social life. I got academic and athletic scholarships to a Division I NAIA school, private school to play volleyball, which I played for 4 years. I did very well in college. I volunteered at a church camp every summer in northern Minnesota. and I would lead trips with campers on 3-day, very strenuous trips. They were canoe trips up into the boundary waters of Canada. That is where I met Cliff. I was 17 and he was 18 when we both met at this camp. And we maintained a long distance relationship for 5 years. He was in Canada, I was in Ohio, and then going to college in Indiana. And I paid for all my plane tickets to go visit him in Canada. I traveled alone to a different country as a teenager quite often. I did all the paperwork for him to get a fiance visa for him to immigrate. It was kind of a complicated process and expensive. And he immigrated here, and it started the process of him becoming an American citizen. We got married in our early 20s. I started teaching 3rd grade, and that's when I started my Mary Kay business right out of college, and earned 3 cars in 16 months, and then went on to build a national area in about 5.5 years. And then I had children. And we had our first about 2 years before we debuted, 1.5 years. And parenting and building a meaningful home life and creating systems in our household that bring life and meaning to our family is hands down the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. Because the people in our home are humans and they have their own free will. And although we can influence them, we cannot directly control their choices or behavior. And that was a tough lesson for me to learn as a new mom, because I was used to controlling things and getting the outcomes that I wanted. And parenting and building a home is a different ballgame. So what I'm about to share has been learned in the trenches and the throes of home life and parenting and building beauty and meaning in our home. For nearly 14 years, we have had good days and we have had bad days. We have had highs and lows. We have had ups and downs. We have had failures and victories, and I've been willing to learn through all of it. And I want to bring the best of what I've learned in that process today. And most of it I've learned through mistakes. And anything I'm going to share with you, just know we don't do it perfectly or with any level of perfection. We are just constantly failing forward on this journey. And may this be a zone, my friends, of zero comparison and no unnecessary regrets. Okay, let's just live in today and move forward and not get too stuck in the past. Because this topic is almost as personal as it gets, minus maybe intimacy with your spouse, your home life and how you run it and how you do family within the walls of the home that you have is an intimate topic. And I don't know if there's a mom that exists that doesn't think back and wonder like, could I have done that better? Or I wish I could have given them more, or man, I messed that up, or I wish I could go back, or I wish I had known that years ago, or I wish I had more time. You know, moms ponder these things in our hearts as we're building a home and systems around it. And I'm going to give you a prayer right off the bat that has been kind of a go-to prayer for me that has brought healing and freedom to any of those thoughts that can creep in. And it's Joel 2:25. I studied this in BSF years ago, and the Bible geek in me wants to give you the full context so you really understand what's happening, but we don't have time for that. And so just know this is God speaking tenderly to his people who have lost much due to their sin and have suffered ramifications because of their choices. And he lovingly promises them, he says, I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten, and never again will my people be put to shame. And I have adopted that promise in his word as a prayer over my children and my family, that God would redeem and restore anything that I feel is lost, time or moments or regrets or mistakes. Anything that feels broken or heavy, I am trusting in his restoration and believing that his ultimate promise to us is restoration and redemption. And this is a specific prayer I lift up whenever I can feel that burden of wishing I had done better or more or different. I pray that he restores and redeems and repays anything that may feel lost. And I hope that that's an encouragement to you today. So we can start today, and it's possible to build new rhythms and new systems that can be a blessing to your family. I hope this feels like a collaboration to you guys, and you can walk away with more tools in your tool belt. And nothing important is easy, right? We know that. Nothing important is easy. And what a fearsome and awesome opportunity to shape human beings inside the walls of our home and to build a household that is a light on a hill in a dark world. And that's what I believe healthy family systems and habits in your home do. Okay, it's not just about having great meal plans, although that's important. It's not just about having an organized schedule, although that's important. This is about discipleship and God discipling us in the journey and process. And then we disciple our children to go shine God's light in this dark world. And let's create family systems that support that ultimate mission. So much of what I've learned that I'm going to share, I've learned through the vehicle of my Mary Kay business. You know, Mary Kay is like a life education. And so we will just add it to the growing list of things that came in my starter kit that I never thought would come in my starter kit. Yes, family systems came in my starter kit, and my business has been a vehicle in which much of this has been learned and practiced. So let me give you a general framework to create any system, family system, home system, business system, just anything. I'm going to give you a general, very simple framework that you can apply to anything. And it's just 2 simple steps. And the first question is, what is ideal? Okay, what is ideal? You want to start with your vision or your preference. Another way to come at the same answer, but you kind of come around it at a different angle, is what bugs me the most about this. Okay, what is ideal or what bugs me the most? It's kind of 2 paths to lead to the same ultimate vision. And so let me give you an example, a business example. When I was a new director, I wanted to create really great new consultant systems. And so I started with this question. I asked, what would I want my new consultants to do to know and to do in their first 6 weeks? Okay, so you're starting with that vision, your preferred outcome first when creating a system. And so let's ask questions about your home. Let's switch to home life. How do you want the meals in your house to run each week? What is an ideal work schedule for you and family life schedule for you? What do you want your house to look like each day? What do you want your house to smell like each day? What chores are you repeatedly doing that children or delegated help could do? What bugs you the most about your home or your family systems? When do you experience a lot of frustration in the home, and what could alleviate that? What kind of buy-in and support do you want from your family when it comes to your business? And what could you adjust in your family systems that would impact your business systems the most? And so you start with the ideal, right? You create the vision, because how can you create any sort of system if you have an undefined preferred outcome? And again, sometimes it's helpful to start with a bug list. So then step 2 is to then identify steps to create that ideal vision or to remediate what's causing tension or frustration. So back to my new consultant systems. I asked the question, okay, what do I want them to know and do in the first 6 weeks? And then I brain dumped a list. And then with that list, I made sure there was a prize connected to each of those items. And then I made sure I had tracking to make sure they were doing it. I was coaching them. Um, they were, and I was encouraging them in that process, right? Because you can't keep track of your new people unless you have some way to track the steps that they're taking. Um, so that's an example of how I went through those 2 simple steps. What is ideal? And then let's create steps. And usually tracking is involved, not always, but usually tracking is involved in that process. So here's a quick family story. My daughter, Aria, who's almost 12, she used to struggle so much getting ready in the morning as maybe like a 7, 8, 9-year-old. I mean, bombs going off in our home. And she was fearful that we would be late, even though we had never been late. And it was just taking the peace out of our home, away from me, away from the other children. And I'm like, okay, we cannot live like this in the morning. So I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? So I spent time, processing that. And then kind of what we landed on is to help her to create 5 steps to take. What are the 5 steps she needs to take in the order that she needs to take them? We talked about it. We wrote them down. We had her 5 steps on paper. We put it on the fridge and created a system for her to create more of an ideal morning flow for us. And it was like magic. She woke up, she looked at her 5 steps on the fridge. She was able to like process them, take those steps. And it's like she had control. And that's what she ultimately needed, like a sense of control that she could do what she needed to do to get ready on time. And it alleviated that fear of being late. Systems sustain momentum. Okay, growth doesn't ever happen, or I'm sorry, growth doesn't ever last. It doesn't ever last without systems to support it. It can happen, and that's the deceiving thing. Growth can happen, but sometimes it's a flash in the pan when there's not systems that support it and back it up. So right off the bat, I'm going to share something that's been really helpful in maintaining our home and our environment before we get into more of the core of the content here. So we learned from James Clear in Atomic Habits. If you haven't read that book, it's a good one. He talks he shares about environment very effectively, how important your environment is. It's like the silent force that's guiding many of your habits, and even our moods are impacted by our environment. And so having an orderly, clean, organized, decluttered, beautiful space in your home contributes to your peace of mind, your productivity, your healthy habits, and the rhythms for your entire household. And we live and work here, right? Our home is an important place. We don't just live here and do family here. We work here too. We're running businesses out of this place. So environment is so much more important for us because we're doing all the things in the walls of our home. And I know for me, frustration comes when it's just all piled up, right? When like everything feels piled up, your office is piled up, the kids' stuff is piled up, the kitchen is piled up, closets are piled up. There's just clutter and small home projects and a lack of organization, and kids can't find clothes that they need. And I end up purchasing athletic equipment that we already had because we couldn't find the stuff that we had already purchased. And the maintenance of your home, and you need to call the HVAC guy, and you need to replace the light bulbs. And when we first moved in here, which was about 6.5 years ago, we didn't have any systematic way to address all those needs, and they were just growing each day. And so we needed a system to create a more preferred outcome, to live in a clean, organized, decluttered, beautiful space that was conducive to our productivity. And we even have help with this, more than childcare help. I have a home manager who runs our home and keeps it together. So I even have help with this, but still the workload is heavy. So there's still things Cliff and I needed to take on. So I use Notes app a lot on my iPhone. And when you share it, that person you shared it with, when they update it, it syncs. And so we use that quite a bit to communicate and keep lists of things. And so we just have a home project and organization note that Cliff and I share together, and it's divided by the 4 seasons of the year. And it gives us this sense of keeping up versus catching up. I would rather fit things in here and there than for it to actually become a thing I have to address and like spend more time on. And so we break larger projects into smaller chunks. Kind of back to my new consultant systems as a new director, I've referred to that a couple times. It was this big project I had to like record all my training and get them a packet with all the relevant resources. It was this massive project that I wanted to do, but felt overwhelmed by it. So I just broke it down into little steps. Like step 1, find my voice recorder and make sure there's batteries in it. Okay, check. I'll do the next step tomorrow. Right? I didn't want to take too much time during the day. I didn't want to take away from IPAs, right? I didn't want any kind of system to take away from the growth of my business. I would rather just fit those bigger projects into the fringes of my day and kind of keep up versus catch up and build a little bit versus like take an entire day or week to do it. I can't declutter my whole house this weekend, but I could declutter one space or maybe one room or maybe one closet. I could do that real quick. And then over a few months, your house is more decluttered. And so it's divided into the 4 seasons of the year. And then we have a miscellaneous list. And it's just this ongoing list that we're adding to as we have small pockets of time on the weekend. We tackle a couple of things. And we probably have done 100 small things this year. 100 small things that allows us to keep our environment in working order without feeling like it's taking away from higher priorities. And I cannot imagine the state of our home if those 100 things went undone because there's no system to create the execution. Also, it removes it from lingering in my mind, okay? When things linger, they take up all that mental real estate. And it always, whenever you think of it, you always don't feel like it's the right time to do it, right? Whenever you think of something, it's never a good time at that moment to address it. And then it just lingers in your mind. You're like, and it takes up all your brain capacity. So I'll just, when something comes up, I just add it to my notes app and knowing that I can get to it later. Here's a quick example. All my kids sleep upstairs. Rowan, the 2-year-old, gets up later than the older kids, but all the doors are squeaky upstairs. So they're up in the morning and the doors are squeaking and waking him up. I'm like, this is so infuriating, but it was never at 6 a.m. It was not a good time for me to address my squeaking doors. So it went on the notes app, and one weekend for like 2 minutes, I took this oil around and sprayed them, and we had no more squeaky doors. So the older kids were no longer waking up the 2-year-old when they're up early in the morning. So that's just one little small example. As a new national, I spent the first year creating new systems and doing new projects. And again, overwhelmed by the thought of all of them, but I decided to do one a month. I was going to do one a month, and that was it, and break it into small little chunks. And after a year, you've got 12 new systems and projects that you've checked off without like the business suicide of taking a whole day or taking a whole week. I don't think a single day should go by, a working day in your Mary Kay business, that you are not doing income producing activities. I do think that's business suicide to do that. And I hope Win the Day has been a really great fresh reminder for you to every day, IPAs, 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 and you've gotten used to looking at them, considering them, seeing what you can do, checking them off, earning your points, because that's the primary stuff we want to do. These systematic things need to go in the fringes, like the before 9 or after 9, or just broken into little chunks. So you're not taking away from what is actually supporting you and growing your business. Boards is a good example. Like I want to update my boards, but ain't nobody got time to spend all day on boards. And so I spend 15 minutes a day doing my boards, making sure it has all the relevant information. They have all the web page access now. Tina and Brian and Cliff and I went out to dinner a few weeks ago, and she showed me all the boards things. And so updating it, but again, not taking too much time each day. I do have a handful of resources. You might want to make a list of resources, and I've got a handful that I'll share with you as we go through this. So that's just a little note-taking tip. And then I did really try to combine mindset and thinking with practical applications. I feel like I went heavier on the mindset, knowing that when you have the what and the why, you can figure out the how. And that your how for you is better than my how for me. So we're all capable of figuring out our own how. I did kind of want to go heavier on like the mindset and the thinking when it comes to family systems. So here's an overview of where we're going. It's kind of 3 categories we're going to dive into. And one is to build on a firm foundation. You're going to build your family systems on a firm foundation. We're going to talk about what that looks like. The second is you're going to get their buy-in. Okay, we need buy-in from the important people in our life who live within the walls of our home. We need their buy-in. So we're going to talk about that. And then the third one is systematize your life, girl. We're going to keep diving into systems that will support you. So let's build on a firm foundation. Linda Tupin, who's now an emeritus, most of you are familiar with. She was the first person who I ever heard talk about the contrast between a traditional home and career versus an entrepreneurial home and career. So let's define them right now. In a traditional career, there are typically set hours and a structure or schedule that's been given to you, decided by someone else. There's a set hourly wage or salary, and you're basically trading your time for income. And it's the route most people in our culture take because our educational system is set up to primarily create traditional careers where you get a job and you work for someone else. And there's typically limits with your income and promotions. Okay, so and of course, this type of career impacts the systems, the routines, the expectations, and the roles that are established in your home. How we do work life greatly impacts how we do home life. Okay, so then let's define entrepreneurial. There are no set hours or pay. You work for yourself, meaning you have to create your own system, your own structures. Nobody's giving it to you. So there's a level of discipline that comes with honoring your own systems and structure. You're typically earning a commission based on your efforts, not on your time per se. And you work until the work is done. And you're often building and investing for future income and reward that typically has no limit. Okay. And of course, this type of career and lifestyle impacts the systems, routines, expectations, and roles that are established in your home. Neither are good or bad, or right or wrong. They're just different. Therefore, a different mindset and expectations, you bring to the table a different type of mindset and expectations, especially when a family is involved. When you're young or single, the nuances of each of these don't make a big difference. It's really when you have a family that your schedule impacts other people. And that's when family systems really start to matter. You can make a list of pros and cons for each, although I am biased and I do think the pros stack higher for being an entrepreneur. And what we're exploring is how to create systems in your family to support the entrepreneurial business that you're building in your home. Okay. So think about the home that you grew up in. Okay, real quick, just kind of think through your home and the values and what your parents did. And actually, drop in the chat if you grew up in a home with a traditional or entrepreneurial career, parents who had either, or maybe a little bit of both. I would love to see um, which one you grew up in. So drop that in the chat and spend a moment reflecting on what was valued, what roles did your parents have, and what mindset was there about work in your home. Because we're bringing all that experience to the table. And if you're married, your spouse is bringing all that experience to the table and those expectations to the table. And sometimes there can be tension between the two. So Cliff and I both grew up in a very traditional home. Our dads worked kind of 9 to 5ers, had jobs and salaries, worked for other people. Our mom stayed home. My mom stayed home with 5 kids for 25 years. And it wasn't until we were in college that she went back to school and joined the workforce. Yet in my home, and this is the difference between Cliff and I, in my home, there was a very strong entrepreneurial spirit. And there were many entrepreneurs in my extended family, like grandparents and aunts and uncles. And so the mindsets were really readily accepted and supported. My parents were always like kind of setting up side businesses and side hustles. My dad was always networking and getting extra work just to make extra money for the family. My mom also helped and supported a real estate agent, kind of as his assistant as he built his business. They always did a lot of home projects. They made all their food from scratch. And so I was always seeing my parents working in their free time and looking for opportunities. And they were never idle people. Working was a part of life. It wasn't like, this is my work life and this is my family life, or this is my work life and this is my leisure life. It was just all mixed in. There wasn't a strong separation. And I think that supported my work ethic to see them work and live like that. Mindset of entrepreneurship is either embraced in your home right now, or there is some resistance, and you want to acknowledge that reality. Is it embraced by you? And what about by your spouse or your parents or any kind of influential people in your life? Is it embraced and accepted, or is it challenged a lot? Important to acknowledge that. How you successfully incorporate a work from home entrepreneurial business into your home and family is the $1,000,000 question. And the answers to those questions that launch us into the topic of this Zoom, which are the systems, habits, routines, and rhythms. I'm going to use those words a lot interchangeably of your household. Okay, so here's where we start to build on a firm foundation. You want to know and be very clear on your family priorities as a family unit, like as a household, and have a vision that exists for your family unit, for who you want to be and what you want to do. So a couple of questions, what do you value? What family culture do you want to create? When people think of your family, what would you want them to think about? What do you want to instill in your children? What do you want them to know or experience before they leave your house and they're doing life on their own? And how do you filter what you say yes and no to as a family? Might even be helpful to go back to Pam's. Pam was the first in this Holistic Woman series back in August, and she talked about identifying your values. You may want to go back and listen to that with your family priorities and values in mind. We all maybe listened with a business filter, but you may want to go back and redo that for your family priorities. And you want to identify words and phrases that represent your top 1 or 2 or 3 or handful of family priorities that you're going to build a firm foundation on. 15 years ago or so, Cliff and I started these like quarterly business meetings together. Sometimes we call them wealth management meetings, or sometimes it's just called get your life together meetings. And we go on a coffee date and we talk about our lives and our dreams and our priorities and our fears and our finances and our kids and our schedules and our careers and our hopes and our frustrations and all the things. And we've kept this ongoing document for the past 15 or so years that's kind of like meeting minutes. And we type out like what we went over and what the agenda was. It's kind of neat to kind of scroll back and look through the years. And at one of those meetings, about 10 years, I want to say like a decade ago, we decided on a family Bible verse. It's Psalm 32:10. The Lord's unfailing love surrounds the one who trusts in him. And we decided on our top three priorities, which have been a guiding light for us and also an inspiration for us over the years. And I'll share them with you in a minute. At our most recent meeting, I think back in October, Cliff and I went out to coffee and we painstakingly went through the harmony wheel. You guys know the harmony wheel, right? I've trained on this a million times. I learned it at coaching school. I always have printed copies in my office, and I'll go through this like 2 or 3 or 4 times a year because it's a good kind of check-in with yourself and your life. And it is a good place to start when you're starting the goal setting process. It divides your life up into 8 categories, and you can kind of evaluate your satisfaction level in all of those. And so Cliff and I sat down and we like painstakingly went through this and we filled it in. And then we talked through every single category and had a really, really interesting conversation. So that might be a good starting point if you're wanting to deepen your clarity on your family priorities. Good to do with your spouse. So our top 3 priorities, they're very simple words. It's not very like eloquent or extravagant, very, very simple, but they're packed with a lot of meaning. And number 1 is faith. Number 2 is adventure or experience. We use those words interchangeably. And number 3 is community. And those priorities are the firm foundation in which we have built our household systems around. And they involve our kids and our family and our careers and have been a guiding light and inspiration. So let's start with faith. I'm going to spend the most time there. I'm not going to touch on the other 2 as much because I want to spend more time on faith. So let's talk about that one. Okay, so in all we do, we work to keep Christ and the gospel at the center of our focus and as a framework for our entire day and for the rhythm of our year, desiring that all we would say and do would bring glory and honor to him, and viewing all of life as sacred, not just like the spiritual church holy moments, but all we do is sacred. My pastor is known for saying, if it's not sinful, it's sacred. Okay, if it's not sinful, it's sacred. Meaning that life is not split into like, these are my spiritual moments, and then these are my unspiritual, secular moments. All of life can bring glory to God and honor to him. And I hope to bring some meaning to the possible mundane things that we do in the home or do for the business, remembering that everything we put our hand to has value and can bring honor to him. The household is where we first learn to live and practice the greatest command of loving God and loving people. You want to think of your home as a little school of love, where your children are first experiencing that love and learning to extend it to God and also extend it to others. And love is at the root of everything that happens in your home. The family is God's primary discipleship plan. It is in our households that we are taught what is most and least important, and we begin to understand how we fit into this big, scary world. And all of our values, whether they're spoken or not, all of our values get hidden under the invisibility cloak of the ordinary systems and routines that happen in your household each day. And the magic of God's grace abounds in normal routines. And we want to create a home that's not just clean and organized with great food and great routines, but we want to create a home that's a missional light in a dark world. And we cannot be lovers of God and lovers of people and our neighbor that we're called to be without examining the habits that happen in our household. And having a business that I have worked from home for 18, almost 19 years, that my children see every day. And it's a business that believes in the value system of putting God first, your family second, and career third, has deeply, deeply impacted our faith walk as a family and the culture of our home. And to bring your Mary Kay business, you guys, in and your starter kit into your home, And the value system into the intimate walls of where you live is an immense gift to your children. If you haven't realized that, let it sink in a bit. And I wish we had all the time to go over what can be learned by building a Mary Kay business in the home. But I know that you know, and I hope you feel it even more deeply today. What a gift and blessing it can be to your family. Some of the greatest spiritual work happens in us and in our children in the normal moments of domestic life, just the day-to-day rhythms of family systems, and the work that it takes and that happens to run your Mary Kay business. And we can bring dignity and sacredness to even the most mundane, repetitive tasks that come with home life and parenting and building a business. Parenting is this unceasing spiritual battle that God uses to refine us. And if it feels like a fight to you, it's because it is. And there is no tiredness like the tiredness of a parent. And we can find God and his mission right at the center of our loud families and our messy homes when we're building a business and raising our children into adults. Here's another verse that I've clung to. It's Psalm 127. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. And unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man and the woman whose quiver is full of them. And I imagine that, like, shooting my children into this world like arrows, to be effective, to be strong, to be equipped, to be faithful, to have work ethic, to be salt and light in a world that needs preservation and hope. And that's what we're doing in our home, and that's what we're raising, and that's what our family systems support. I'm just going to give you a quick list of like systems and habits that support our priority of faith. Um, did you mention that book, Julia?
No, but that just sounded like it.
Yes, this is one of my resources. I'm going to tell you about it in a second.
Okay.
Habits of the Household.
Love it.
I'm like, oh, she's read that. I'm not surprised. um, so first one, systems that support the priority of faith. And these are not necessarily all spiritual things, but rhythms we feel are important in discipling our children. So first one is we do honor the Sabbath on Sunday. I don't think it has to be on Sunday. That just happens to be the day that we do it, and not out of legalism and trying to check a holy box, but out of love for God and love for his ways. And it's become more and more meaningful over the years. As our children have gotten older and our lives have become more and more busy, we find great comfort, relief, value, and worth in resting in God's love and provision on Sunday. And I'm very vocal about what the Sabbath means. There is actually a resource that I'll share with you. Put it on your resources list because this is a good one. It's from the Bema podcast, which I actually heard through Jamie Winship. And then actually a good friend in my neighborhood a few doors down really follows the Bema podcast. And I think Julia has listened to this too. And it's the very first episode. Go listen to it. It's on the Sabbath. And I stole this line from the guy who did the podcast because he tells his children this. I'm like, oh, that's good. We rest, we play, and we remember God loves us, and we rest in that love and provision. That's what we do on the Sabbath. We rest, we play, and we remember God loves us, and we rest in that love and provision. I say that to my kids every single Sunday. We love Sundays. It's the only day my kids do not have a list of responsibilities or contributions that I ask them to do in our home. And I tell them, I say, anything you would choose to do, because Aria loves to set the table for dinner. She loves to do that. We all clean up after dinner. I make Sunday dinner. So I say anything you would choose to do that would be perceived as work is your choice, and it's an act of loving kindness to our family. And I tell them I choose to make dinner for our family and clean up after out of a heart of loving kindness. And so keeping the Sabbath is a part of our weekly routine, and we all cherish that day so much because it invites us into a rhythm of renewal that we desperately need and prepares us to go be effective during the work week. It does involve church attendance for us. We go at 9:30 on Sunday mornings, which is another important rhythm that we have. My older ones go to youth group while the rest of us go to the normal church service. And again, not in a legalistic way, but in a viewing them as a gift from God. and wanting to be a part of the body of Christ. Okay, number two. Also happens on Sunday. We do a Sunday family devotion time. We have an early dinner on Sunday, and it's after dinner that we do this. We've done this for several years now. It has a strong spiritual development focus, but we also use it just for general education for our kids. And we want to explain the why behind things. Like, why do we make choices? Why do we do this? So it's everything, guys, from politics to what sugar does to your body, to why they don't have smartphones and probably never will in our home, to the impact of social media on children, to money management, to prayer, to why we eat like we do, to reading through the Gospel of John, and the list goes on and on. And there's almost nothing we won't talk about with them. And we encourage them to bring topics to the table. We encourage them to ask questions and push back, and just give them freedom to explore and learn and think. Like before Fall Advance, our topic was expectations at that event and the why behind why we are going and doing this event, and knowing that they weren't there to just have fun and get what they wanted, but that we were there to love and to serve the people that were there. And their needs were going to be second to the needs of the people that were there. So that was a Sunday topic for family devotion time, just to give an example. And guys, don't get some romantic idea that our kids are like hanging on our every word and just like eating up what we're saying. No, 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 no. That's not what happens. It's loud, it's messy, often frustrating. Rowan, as a 2-year-old, is incredibly distracting. And it's all of that. And we just persevere. And we don't get caught up in the perfection of it, but we do honor that, what we believe is very important time to disciple them. And we usually have some kind of treat. We're not big dessert people, but on Sunday, there's some kind of treat that they have, and we keep it brief. We don't drone on for hours. And there's typically something to look forward to afterwards. Some family activities, some games, some like fun time together that they look forward to. So that's been a real core part of our weekly rhythm. Okay, I'm going to start talking faster. Next one, family nights. Guys, when my kids were younger, it was easy to have dinner at home as a family because they weren't overly involved. And then all of a sudden they moved to these like middle-aged children. They were way overly involved, and they still are. I got this advice once, like they can pick one activity per season. And for some reason, I've never followed that. And so they're wildly involved in things. And I was looking at my planner thinking, when are our family nights at home to have dinner? Because I know how important that is. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. And so I decided to track it. I'm like, we're going to have 123 family nights where we're all together, because we're always together, but sometimes there's groups moving in different places and moving in different directions. So we had to all be together, share a meal, and do some kind of intentional activity, whether a walk or a board game, or just we have these conversation cards that sit on our dinner table in a box. And sometimes we'll just pull out a couple of conversation cards and read them, and it gets them talking in their kid appropriate questions. Sometimes we just turn on loud music and we all clean up the kitchen together and dance around and have a dance party. So it's just something simple that we're going to do as a family together. So I started tracking this because I wanted to be intentional about it, and I actually stopped tracking it partway through the year because we had already reached that goal. And to my great relief, I saw that Cliff and I, with 2 very high energy careers and 5 very overly involved children, still had a lot of meaningful family time. And there was time for that. And it was intentional and very, very meaningful. And so, so we started these family nights, different from our Sunday devotion night. So let's talk about meal times, guys. This is a keystone habit for us. And it's not just a routine of fueling your body, but I view meal times as driving us towards relationship. That's the end goal of meals, is it drives you in relationship with God and with others. And food is a strong theme throughout the entirety of God's word, because food's end goal is relationship. And so sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to create a beautiful meal, sit down all together in one place with no phones on, and just share a meal together. And they have done all kinds of studies on this, about children who grow up having meals together at home. It impacts their behavior, their intelligence, their vibrancy, their ability to problem solve. I mean, it's all kinds of crazy things that are just learned around the dinner table. They actually studied scholars from all different fields who had almost nothing in common but were very successful and very intelligent. And they found the one thing they had in common is that they all grew up having family meals together, having family dinners together around the dinner table. So it's a keystone habit that I think has many positive, lasting outcomes to make that a priority. And it creates space for conversation, which creates space for knowing how to be in relationship and how to hold a conversation. And the difference between people who happen to live together and families who actually befriend each other are the rhythms of conversation that happen at meal times. And so I cling to it. I cling to it and I fight for it because it teaches so many things that you could not teach with words alone. And there's a book I'm going to share that elaborates even more that we don't have time for. And for about 10 years, we have had help preparing meals. And if that is an option for you, it's the biggest game changer to have support with meals. Even if there's somebody who can pick up the groceries, rinse them for you, and chop all the stuff up. Even if that's what you have, we've had support in that, and I can't imagine not having support in meal prep, specifically dinner prep. So here's a couple other just food related things that I'll just briefly go over. Dana did such a good job of feeding your family. And I have help with all of this. We have easy to grab foods in the front of the fridge. They can't find anything in the back. You could hide a treasure back there. They're never going to find it. You got to put everything you want them to grab in the front. So we have hard boiled eggs and cut up strawberries and blueberries, cut up carrots and cucumbers and hummus and just all that stuff. We've got fermented pancakes they can grab. It's all in the front that they can grab, and that creates good systems for their eating and just rhythms for snacking. I do click list or Instacart or Whole Foods delivery. Gone are the days of pushing a grocery cart around with all your children screaming in it. And unless you just like to do that, you can have your groceries delivered or picked up for you. We've done times where we've done meals on certain days, like it's Taco Tuesday and it's charcuterie board night and it's grill night. So sometimes if you define each day and it's a certain category, it takes a lot of decision making out of the process if you just kind of have a routine that you follow. And we buy in bulk and we cook in bulk. There's a little window of time during COVID. I didn't have help with meals. We lost that help. And I would do just a food prep day and try to food prep for the entire week in one day when I didn't have the support that we really needed. So quick evening routine that's important to us. They all come into our bedroom and either Cliff or myself read to them. We always have a book series going and we'll read to them and then a nighttime prayer and then they all go off to their beds. So it's just this nice little touch point for us. Reading aloud, they've done studies on that. Really great for your kids' brains. And it kind of calms them down. Send them off with a nighttime prayer. They go to bed. So that's a little evening routine that we really enjoy. And then just rhythms of prayer throughout the day. I send them out in the morning covered in prayer. My two oldest go out the earliest
Come on,
and
guys,
part of a carpool.
let's go out.
And so I'll pray over them in the morning. I drive the younger ones to school. We pray before we turn on music that we love. And so just kind of starting their day with prayer and having rhythms of prayer throughout your day is important. We observe the Advent season. And then we also really observe Holy Week leading up to Easter. So we do nightly devotions. Actually, I've got a couple more resources for you. Come Let Us Adore Him. This is our Advent devotion book. There's just a short little reading that we do each night during the Advent season. And then during Holy Week, it's by John Piper. It's one little devotion each night of the week during Holy Week. I can type these out and send these if you didn't get a chance to write them down. And I do the same books. I've done these same books every year. Like when it's Christmas time, pull out the same book. Easter time, pull out the same book. That's been a really good yearly rhythm for us. And then, so that kind of covers it with rhythms for building faith. Number 2 is adventure and experiences. We use a lot of our vacation and travel time to instill an adventurous spirit in them and get them out of their comfort zones. So we do Spartan races, and we went to the CrossFit Games in an RV, and we went out to Mount Rushmore in an RV, and we went to Berlin, Germany, and none of that was leisurely. It was actually like small miracles that we were actually able to pull a lot of those things off, but just did them with a priority of like seeking adventure, which you can do in everyday life through hikes and being outdoors and being active and going to bike parks and trampoline parks. There's all kinds of ways to instill that sense of adventure. And then community. We're deeply invested in community, and it makes our life really, really busy. But we have made a decision to just be plugged into communities, very, very plugged into communities that are important to us. And there's been much fruit from it in our lives. And another benefit of kids plugged into communities is it pulls them away from technology and screens, pulls them away. They don't have time for it because they're doing life in person with friends, either outside or sports activities or church activities or family activities. They're doing life with friends in person, building real relationships, making eye contact, having conversations. There's not a lot of time for screens or technology. It really pushes it to the fringes of our life and the outer edges of our life. Okay, get their buy-in. Let's talk about this. You want to get your family's buy-in. You want them to be on board with the direction you're moving in as a household and in your business as well. And so we're very loud about their contribution, that it matters, that they make a difference. Our home doesn't run without their support. We're a family, so we work together. They're needed and responsible to contribute. Their work is valued and valuable. And we use those words and say that over and over again. And we want them to take ownership of their contribution. And giving age-appropriate responsibilities increases a child's sense of self-worth and sense of belonging. To know that they are needed and that what they contribute has value does wonders for the psyche of a young person. Because the adventure of life is found in responsibility, and character is made noble by making a personal sacrifice for others. And so we're just loud and very repetitive about their contribution makes a difference to my business, and my business makes a difference to our family and how we operate in our home. And so you want to help to make that connection. A few years ago, as our kids started to enter the ages that they had more capacity to contribute, right? The little ones don't have as much capacity, but the middle-aged ones do. Cliff, I had kind of reached a point of frustration, and he sort of led the way with this at dinner. He's like, okay, guys, what needs to be done in our house every day just for our house to run? And he had a piece of paper and a pen, and they're all like sharing their ideas, and he's sort of prompting them, but he's letting it kind of be their idea. And he wrote down the list. And then he's like, okay, so let's go back through this list. And who does all these things each day? It was like, mommy, mommy, mommy. It was mommy who does all the things. And again, I've always had great help, you guys, but a family in the home is a heavy workload. And so he's like, well, which ones do you feel like you could do? Let's pick ones. So, and they were very enthusiastic. I want to do this. I want to do this, because people support that which they helped to create. They felt like it was their idea. They felt like they had some control over it. And all of a sudden we kind of had chores established with them that they chose for themselves. And so there was just more buy-in, right? There's more buy-in. Instead of you have to do this, they were like, oh, I get to do this. I chose this one. This is my job. Okay, so it really helped like the paradigm shift for having their buy-in. And again, don't get some romantic idea that my kids love to do chores and they're always like gleeful about it. It's not the case, but there are things you can do to support their willingness. A friend passed on this piece of advice that to teach children to manage freedoms, and give them as much opportunity to have responsibilities and choices and independence, even to make mistakes, of course, within healthy, safe boundaries. But we want to give that to them because remember, we're putting arrows out there into the world to be salt and light and effective contributors to society. And so, looking at my time and I'm looking at my notes. So we're going to skip to this part. I'm going to skip a little chunk.
Leah, you could always leave that little chunk maybe in a Boxer message and
Okay.
little tiny chunks. We don't want to miss
Yeah.
anything. I think I speak for everyone. We're all like, huh, tell us more, tell us more.
Yeah. So I might leave a little Voxer chunk. on this part, so I can just really, I'm getting close to finishing. I'll finish with this last chunk. Um, so systematize it, girl, right? So we built on a firm foundation. We got their buy-in. I'll leave another chunk about that later. And now we're going to systematize it, which we've been talking about, what we're going to continue in that vein. Um, and so here's a real reframe on family habits. Okay. The family living in a household together is God's primary discipleship plan. We've talked about that. And discipling happens in the context of the habits we form and the rhythms that we keep. My habits are forming me into a certain type of parent. My parenting is forming them into certain types of children. And then together we are forming a certain family culture. And then a household is born that goes out into the world to influence and impact. And it's based on who we are that our habits created in us. We become our habits, and then our kids become us. Kind of a scary thought. We cannot go out into the world and love God and our neighbor without examining the habits of our household. And to steward the habits of your family is to steward the hearts of your family. The aggregate impact of habits is as big as each habit is small. Habits are not just neurologically formative, they're spiritually formative because the heart always follows the habit. And habits of the household are not just actions that form our family's routines, they're liturgies that form our family's heart. And routines build who we are, and they become the story and culture of our families. Our greatest spiritual work happens in just normal domestic life. And so I've learned much from this book. Here's another resource for you, Habits of the Household. Really, really excellent. And I'll just give like a brief, kind of a brief overview of it for you. Um, so you can decide if you want to read it. It's practicing the story of God in everyday family rhythms, and he breaks the categories into 10 categories, I believe, that are just stuff you're doing anyways. It's just things you're always doing, um, and maybe possibly missing the significance of it. Um, and it brings meaning and value to just normal everyday things, and makes it feel like it's very hopeful. It's very hopeful. It makes you feel like you can do it. You can disciple your children. And it doesn't have to take gobs of time. You already have the opportunities every day around you, anyways. So just capture those opportunities. And so here are the categories: waking, okay, wake time, and teaching your children to like wake their tired hearts up to the light of Jesus and to wake up to truth and reality. And it how you start your day impacts the mood of your home. Okay, so you waking up to the reality and love of God so that your family is waking up to the same reality, and praying over them as they're waking and sending them out into the world covered in prayer. So that's an important part of your day. How do you wake up together as a family? How do you wake up in the morning, and how is that impacting the rhythms in your home? Meal times, that's another big one. I spent a good chunk of time talking about meal times, how important those are. Disciplining your children. It is geared towards like younger children, smaller children, but still very helpful and effective. Screen time is a great chapter on screen time. Family devotions, marriage, work, play, conversation, and bedtime. Okay, so those are the categories. It's a great book if you need some support in that. So to close, you guys, out of all of that, what is one thing, and I want you to just jot this down on your paper, like what's one thing that stuck out the most that you almost feel like God's speaking to you, or maybe creating some tension? Okay, what's that one thing? What's one new system you can implement and break it down into chunks? Not going to take away any IPA time, but break it down into chunks and do it over time and have a new system for your family. And then what are 3 next steps you want to take to implement some of this stuff? I wanted to leave you guys with some sort of a plan and some sort of action and steps to take that you guys can implement. So, and that's what I got for you.
Oh my gosh, Leah. I really didn't want it to end. I'm like, oh, you can keep going. I have to get off the Zoom. I have to get off the Zoom. Oh my gosh, so good. I think one thing I want to speak to is I know the mindset is so important, but like your actual examples of how you and Cliff operate and how you parent and the touchstones that you have in your day and in your week, it's almost like giving a voice to possibilities that most of us don't even know it's possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I mean, like
for
even
sure.
talking about like everyone gathers around your bed and you have a book going and everyone reads the same book. The 2-year-old all the way up to
Mhm.
like the
Yeah.
14-year-old
Yep.
read the same book. I mean,
Mhm.
like I haven't even ever had that thought before because I'm like, well, I've got like now I have 4 kids. I'm trying to figure out, you know. So anyway, it just was so good. And I want to also say that for anyone that is on and you were like, oh my gosh, I've done it all wrong, or my kids are grown, or I've blown it. Like I just appreciate that you started off with God's extravagant grace and mercy, and that most of us are doing better than we probably
Mhm.
give ourselves credit for or think that we're doing. And like, you know, you can start a diet in the middle of a bag of potato chips.
Yes,
You can
yes,
begin
yes.
today with, you know, with your parenting, with your love, and with the way that you live and operate. And Leah, you're just such an example for us. And I know that you would say, like, I fall down every day and I make mistakes every day. And so I know you're human, but it's just, you bless us with your life. Um, the fact that you and Cliff meet every quarter and have that discussion about like the household and each other, and I imagine you're very vulnerable and you probably share, you know, like your fears and your hopes and your dreams, and like how many of us can say we have a marriage where we sit down that intentionally every quarter and have that type of intimate conversation, deep conversation with our spouse. I mean, it's just you're such a light and an example, and you're well beyond your age and wisdom.
Mhm.
And so thank you. I mean,
Thank
I
you.
say thank you in all caps, like over and over again. I wish the English language had a better word than just thank you, because
Aw,
I want you to feel my resounding love for you, respect for you, and gratitude for what you shared with us. So thank you.
thank you. That's very generous, very, very generous. It was an honor to be a part of this that you
Yeah,
have been leading us through. So,
absolutely. Well, I'll definitely be watching this again. And so thank you for your investment in us. And thank you to each of you who were on today. And I know that this recording will multiply like ripples and will hit so many people because by the number of people that were on, we had like 45, I think, at one point. Like, I mean, I just know like it will be explosive. So thank you. It's such a
yeah.
point of interest. So thank you to all of you. And I will post this in the Facebook group as well as the resources. Just give me a day-ish to kind of get all that on there. But I promise I'll post that in the Facebook group so you don't miss a thing. And so we'll get all that from Leah. And again, thank you all. You blessed us greatly. So everyone,
Well,
have a great day. Thank
love you
you,
guys. Yeah.
Leah.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.